So Mr. Ramsey is a philosopher, interested in epistemology, interested in whether things are real. That's an important important aspect of his professional life. And remember, he says he talks about his mind as like the keys of a piano. This is on page 33. It was a splendid mind, for if thought is like the keyboard of a piano divided into so many notes, or like the alphabet is ranged into 26 letters all in order, then his splendid mind had no sort of difficulty in running over those letters one by one, firmly and accurately, until it had reached, say, the letter Q. He reached Q. Very few people in the whole of England ever reach Q. Here, he stops and he thinks, by the geraniums, how do I get to R? That's Mr. Ramsey. How do I get to R? I've gotten to Q. My first book was really good. I got further than most philosophers ever get. That's not good enough. How do I get on? How do I think even further? And this is, Bertrand Russell's problem. This is the problem of lots of philosophers who solve questions, answer questions in history of philosophy, they think, and then get to questions for which they can't find the answer, and it seems like the limit of their mind. They're not looking for data; they're looking for logic and for arguments. They're closing their eyes and thinking really hard. And Mr. Ramsey's trying to get to R. He's closing his eyes and thinking really hard. It's too bad he closes his eyes so much because he's married to Mrs. Ramsey. Mrs. Ramsey is a character that we have now to spend a little time on. And the first thing that everybody notices, I hope, about Mrs. Ramsey is that she is the most beautiful person that most people will ever have seen. This is very important for Virginia Woolf. The physical beauty of this mother figure, that she walks into a room and you can't help it. You just look at her and say, oh my goodness, she's just beautiful. Men find her beautiful, women find her beautiful, children think she's lovely. She's just she has that charisma of physical beauty. So important for Mrs. Ramsey. And it allows her to do certain things. When she says, will you walk with me to town? People say, oh, okay. and then they like it. Or it also makes it hard for her because every time she walks into a room, whatever she says, people are thinking, my gosh, she's so beautiful. They're not maybe listening in the same way as they would to another person. And Mrs. Ramsey, as one of the characters says, nature has but little clay like that of which she molded you. Mrs. Ramsey lives for relationships. She lives for her children, for her husband. She seems to need to make connections. There's all that talk in the novel about how she likes to see other people get married. She likes to couple up people. She makes matches. She wants to connect people. You don't have to be that much of a Freudian to see that she's the Freudian eros, the combinatory force. She wants to combine things, bring things together into perfect dinners, into perfect love life, matches, into friendship. She wants things to cohere. Whereas Mr. Ramsey's an analyst. He pulls things apart to see how they work. And Mrs. Ramsey wants things to cohere, and her beauty actually facilitates coherence. That's something very important for Virginia Woolf. Doesn't that really explain why, but beauty facilitates coherence. Things that are fair and lovely come together, hold together. And Mrs. Ramsey holds things together. So a great question that the novel asks, I'm looking here at my notes, my iPad here. The great question that the novel asks is this question of what is real, which is one that Mr. Ramsey asks throughout the novel, and that question is one that we get different answers to in the novel. How to address this question: what is real? I want to turn your attention to a scene. This is a scene in chapter 9, in the first part of the novel. on this edition, it's page 50 and 51. Lily is looking up at Mrs. Ramsey and trying to make sense of what she sees. Was it wisdom? Was it knowledge? Was it once more the deceptiveness of beauty, so that all one's perceptions halfway to truth were tangled in a golden mesh? Or did she lock up within her some secret which certainly Lily Briscoe believed people must have for the world to go on at all? Lily continues, skipping a little bit. What art was there known to love or cunning by which one pressed through into those secret chambers? What device for becoming, like waters poured into a jar, inextricably the same, one with the object one adored? How do you become one with the object one adores, is what Lily is asking. Could the body achieve, or the mind, subtly mingling in the intricate passages of the brain or the heart? And here Lily gets to the essential question of this part of the novel. Could loving, as people called it, make her and Mrs. Ramsey one? Could loving make two people one? For it was not knowledge, but unity that she desired. There it is. That's the underlined thing for our purposes. Not knowledge, but unity that Lily desires. Not inscriptions on tablets, nothing that could be written in any language known to men, but intimacy itself, which is knowledge, she thought, leaning her head on Mrs. Ramsey's knee. How do we touch other people, sealed as we are? This is a phrase of Virginia Woolf's in the novel. How do you know someone else? How do you know, as Mr. Ramsey says, what is real? Mr. Ramsey thinks you can understand philosophically what is real by analyzing things to see what's really real, to use our phrase in this class. Mrs. Ramsey tries to get at what is real by connecting to it, by enfolding other things in what's called in the book a web of love. A web of love. It was love that brought people together. That's the message of the beginning of, or the first part of this novel. It's this web of love that connects one with the other. Not a logical deduction, but an intimacy born of affection and art. So Virginia Woolf has characters into the lighthouse that are shaken by this question of what is real. They're shaken by this question because, well, Mr. Ramsey, he's wondering if there's a table here when he's not here. You know? He's wondering if there's a table here. What do we call it again? Skepticism about objects, right? And he really wonders how he could know for sure what's really there. And what do we call Mrs. Ramsey's skeptical musing? What do we call the skepticism of what? Other minds. Mrs. Ramsey wants to know, are these people really love me? Am I just a vain, beautiful woman who gathers people around me for my own purposes? Is my husband really a jackass like everybody seems to think? Or is he the man of my life? How can I know what counts? What would count? You know? How do I break it down into a problem that I can wrestle with? This problem is what is real. And in this sense, she gives Mrs. Ramsey gives Mr. Ramsey a sense of reality. By her laugh, her poise, her confidence, that it was real. The house was full, the garden blowing. It really is there, Mr. Ramsey. You're not alone. You're not alone. Because the flip side of the skeptical question, one of the flip sides of the skeptical question is, am I all alone? Is there anyone else here with me? Or are all these things just products of my own imagination? And Mrs. Ramsey wants to reassure by her very presence that, no, you're not alone, I'm here. And I hold everything together.
in doing so, as Wolf writes later in the passage, she spends herself, scarcely a shell of herself left. You know, she gives so much, reassuring everybody else that it's okay, that she doesn't have what's left. I mean, you see this all the time, don't you, with children? Some of you probably work in the schools, volunteering, and you see this with children. I have these three very different kids, but so often as they were growing up, they asked me what was the really real. No, they didn't. But they would say, "It's going to be all right, right? It's going to be okay." Right? That's that question right now. It's going to be okay. And the right answer is yes, no matter what the circumstances are, when they're very little, because what they want is this world is going to hold together. And Mrs. Ramsey provides that affirmation, that yes.
There's a fairy tale that's being read to the little boy in this part of the novel. That is Mrs. Ramsey's reading to James, The Fisherman's Wife. And if you go look up the fairy tale, The Fisherman's Wife, you'll see that it involves a fisherman who gets magically gets something from the sea, gets a fish, gives it to his wife. She wants something more than a fish. She wants luxuries, and she wants more luxuries, and he keeps going back to the magic source in the ocean, and the wife keeps saying, "Oh, get me! You got that? Get me more! Get me more! Get me more!" And finally, she wants to be as powerful as God. I want to create the whole universe, and then it all comes crashing down. And this is not an accident that this is the fairy tale being told into the lighthouse, because this is what is wrong with civilization in the point of view of this novel, which is that we keep asking for more and more. We keep wanting greater and greater things, and as we want and seek greater and greater things, we move closer to disaster. And disaster does happen here eventually. We're not satisfied with intimacy. We're not satisfied with connection. We're not satisfied with these little stories. We want to go beyond those things and get more and more, like in The Fisherman's Wife. Mr. Ramsey wants some expression of certainty. Mrs. Ramsey wants him to be happy to be with her and with the family, and just be together. And he wants more. And wanting more can lead, as in The Fisherman's Wife, to disaster. This pursuit of connection as opposed to knowledge, and intimacy as opposed to knowledge, is enacted, is performed, if you will, in the scene of the dinner party, or the dinner at the Ramsey's house towards the end of the first half of the novel, when Mrs. Ramsey serves the daube. This is one of the great scenes in 20th century literature. And it's a scene in some ways of the everyday. They're all coming into dinner. Everybody with their own stories. The little kids have been running around playing. The adolescents, or they've been falling in love. Or are they going to lose their innocence, like Minna loses her brooch? Or are they going to become married couple? The older people have their own stories. Everybody in their own little world. That's the moral of that scene. Everybody's in their own little world. They come together around this dinner table, and Mrs. Ramsey has to make a world out of them. And it's around food and drink. And Lily is like in her own world. She's like, "Gosh, that salt shaker, can I move it here and make it a perfect line?" And Mrs. Ramsey looks at her at some point, remember, and wants her to make conversation. And in some ways, this is the most banal of all things. Make conversation. Be civil. Make connection. But on the other hand, for Virginia Woolf, it's the key to everything in web things, in intimacy.